Aloha and welcome back to another Maestro's Vibe. My name is Juan Jefe Espinal, and I am honored to be back here with another highly esteemed guest, somebody who I've had the honor and privilege of working with here. Actually, a fellow Wildcat, got the utmost of respect for Miss Ashley Oyama, going to be talking about student voice. So welcome and big aloha.
And welcome back, everyone. This is Cab on the ones and twos, and I'm with.
This is Karina Hernandez. Welcome back, and we would love to hear a little bit about Miss Oyama. Yay!
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talking with you guys this afternoon. Like you all mentioned, I'm Ashley Oyama. I am going into my 4th year of teaching at Konawaina Elementary School. Prior to teaching, I actually was an educational assistant for 3 years. You know, I've been at Konawaina Elementary, I'd like to think, pretty much my whole time here. I had my 2 boys go through the school. I did my student teaching here. So I belong at Konawaina Elementary School. And I've had the privilege of working with Juan for 2 years when I taught 5th grade.
What a wild ride. I still have my squad keychain that you gave me. I'm still part of that squad. I still appreciate you. But ever since you've left me and you have been on to bigger, better things, I can't help but pull into campus on a daily basis and see that beautiful banner, that beautiful pink parking space that's dedicated to you. And I would say it's kind of rare to have a parking space as a public educator. So maybe you'd like to share with our listeners a little bit on how you got that.
Sure, yes. It is very hard to miss as you're driving through campus. You know, it's been a really crazy year with the changes that has been happening, but to have, be blessed with this honor, being the West Hawaii Complex Area Teacher of the Year, that's huge for me. I'm still processing it. It's been months already, but it's still something that I think about all the time, how I got here, the people that's worked with me, helped me to get to this place that I'm at. It's been amazing. Such a blessing.
As someone who's been at that school, I just couldn't think of someone who's been putting in so much effort. I mean, you all see the background. If y'all are listening on the podcast right now, you're not watching us on YouTube, then maybe you won't see it. But right behind Miss Oyama, you are going to see that unmistakable school background. You're in there, you're getting to work. You're always thinking about the kids. And that's something that I've had a lot of respect for you for. And I've seen it for years, like even with your own kids at the school. With all the kids at our school. And it really is something that I think teachers should strive for and continue to strive for, is continuing to think about the kids in the community, because you've been a community member for so long. And if you what does Konawaina mean to you?
Wow, that's a really good question. I've been at Konawaina in many different roles. I graduated from Konawaina High School. It was always a dream for me to teach one day. I always, had that in the back of my mind. I became a mom, and that was my full responsibility, and I wanted to make sure I was with my kids, during the beginning parts of the year, because that's the most important part to me, is being with them when they're so young. When they got into Konawaina, I volunteered a lot as a parent. I was able to go into classrooms and I watched the teachers, and it was from that moment that I knew I needed to be a part of this school. Just the way everything here is a family. Everyone's willing to help, that Ohana vibe, it was huge for me. Going through the school year with my kids, I got to work with different teachers as a parent, and I learned so much before I even went into my teaching program. I was very lucky to transfer to Konawaina Elementary in my 3rd year as an EA and work with our preschool program. And then I went right into my student teaching. I was manifesting the vibes like, keep me here. I want to stay here for my student teaching. And luckily that all worked out for me. So I was able to work with some amazing teachers during my program. And my first year as a fifth grade teacher was amazing. I got to work with an amazing team. So just for me, it's just that Ohana vibe, just being able to fit in regardless of your background and what you do. And there's like no judgment. So that's what I really, really like about Konowaina. And that's what I feel I embody as well.
Definitely. When you jumped in on the call, I just felt the sense of aloha, and it's just your smile is so contagious as well. But I love your journey of how you became a teacher, right? How you started being an EA, and then you grew in your career in at Konawana Elementary. I think that's so powerful. And then now your journey in leading to being the West Hawaii Teacher of the Year. I mean, that's amazing, and that's so powerful and such an inspiration for our Konawaina students, you know, because like you said, you graduated Konawaina High School, you have dreams of being a teacher, and now you have fulfilled that, and it's really amazing. We're so thankful to hear your story and just for you to share that with us.
Thank you.
And if from my observation, you're not the kind of teacher that just rests on their laurels. You know what I mean? You're not just going to sit there and say, job well done. All right, good job. Let me pat myself on the back or anything like that. And it brings me kind of to our first official question here in our interview process, which is not really, but is just thinking about how is this time been going for you? Like how has the social distancing, how's all that been going for you lately?
I'm going to be really honest, it's been very difficult. I don't think I've worked as hard this year, you know, and I haven't been teaching for very long, but this has been so hard, you know, making sure I'm keeping my expectations, you know, things that I would like the students to uphold, but then also being understanding of the environment that they're in. It's a lot harder. Some of them technology is a challenge for them, and that's the way that we're presenting our instruction. So being mindful of that. At this point, it really is about the social emotional and making sure that they are, you know, well on their end. A lot of it is making, you know, creating that schedule for them and not putting too much so they know what's expected every day. They know that they have this and this and this to take care of versus, you know, change throughout the day. So making sure it's consistent so they know, okay, on Monday I'm doing this, on Tuesday I'm doing this, on Wednesday we do this, just so that it's a regular thing for them. Every day they know what to expect. Um, it's been a struggle for teacher and students, you know, holding up those expectations. What I can say and that I am really proud to see is that a lot of the GLOs that we focus on in school, usually it's a struggle for them in school in person, but I'm seeing the opposite with online. A lot of them are very self-directed. The quality of the work that they're producing is amazing. Being able to explain, you know, complex thinking has been, it's awesome. I don't know if I would see that type of GLO levels in the classroom at this point in the school year, but it has been amazing. The student voice, making sure that they're taking accountability for their work, asking for help when they need to, has been going really well. Usually the teacher's in the class with them, so they can just raise their hand, the teacher will go over to them. Now it's like, we only have about an hour and a half together. You have to get your questions in, you have to make sure you know what you need to do and ask those questions before class is over. So I've seen the opposite with the GLOs. My students are being very successful with that online.
That's really cool to hear. And I think when I hear you speaking about this environment of being online, right, you still are doing something that is so instrumental to elementary educators in particular, which is having rituals and routines, right? So it's like making sure that the rituals and routines don't just stay face to face, but now we're creating rituals and routines in our online platform to give the students some sense of normalcy where they know what's to be expected. And I'm just really curious about that second point that you were talking about, Ashley, that student voice component. You know, when you think about student voice in an online setting, what are some things that you are seeing that work well?
At first, it was a struggle. A lot of the students were very shy. They didn't know if it was okay to ask or to say, I don't know how to do this. I need more help. They didn't know. I didn't know how to, structure that as well. But as time went by, and, it's kind of like I've opened it up to where I want the students to take management of that. So if there is questions, I would ask, is there anybody that can answer that before I would step in? So giving them the opportunity to kind of talk to each other and build that social piece has been really awesome. Morning times I would just do like welcoming breakout rooms, so just random breakout rooms for them to talk to each other. Our Monday classes have been very football oriented. I have a very sporty class this year, so our Monday circle has been very football oriented, and it's been really awesome. But I think starting the day, as a family and not putting any academics yet and just talking about how we're feeling, what we're doing, and having them talk to each other. And I always tell them, I don't like hearing my voice a lot. I want you guys to take control and lead and speak. And, it's been really well. They've been doing a really good job doing that.
Wow.
That's something that I've noticed in your class before the pandemic that is very evident is that you do take time to listen to kids. Like, and it and some tangible examples would be like the flexible seating in your classroom. You know, you just walk by that class and you're like, man, that looks like a fun classroom because you listen to the kids and you figured out what would work with them, and you worked to get that for them. And I think that these breakout rooms, these rituals, like, is there anything else that you've noticed that brings out that student voice during this particular time where everything has changed so much?
I always like to, for me, it's like my actions, right? I always like to make sure that whatever I say that I also do. So I've been making mistakes, planned mistakes, but also just mistakes as an adult and a teacher. And I love when they catch that. And then I want them to tell me these things. So the planned mistakes are, when we're doing our math and reading, they have to explain to me. Sometimes I don't even know I'm making a mistake, and they'll, Mrs. Oyama, like, yes, I noticed this is not correct. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this. But just for them to have that comfort level of being able to correct, I think it's huge. But in a nice way. They do it in a really nice way with, like, their positive words. That's okay, try again. And they'll say that to me. So just giving them the opportunity to communicate and learn.
And think about for us as teachers and as adults, because I think I've had to grow a lot in the way I talk to kids. Like, really, really grow and not just be overbearing. Because I think especially in elementary school as a man, it's easy to be overbearing. It's You're bigger, your voice is bigger. But now we're in a place where you're physically down. We're all at eye level. I can't overpower this mic. You just heard it right now. If I speak too loudly, there's going to be all these reverberations that make it hard to listen to each other. So I think it almost like brings us on a similar plane that I think is pretty cool. And I think it's cool that kids have many options to speak up. I mean, the chat is one of the most interesting things to me. It is. At first, I was afraid of the chat. I was kind of, I didn't want chat. I think some of the best learning kind of happens in the chat at times, like some of those moments where you're talking about helping. It's like, hey, could someone help out? Kids jump, some of the kids that you don't even think are paying attention, they just.
I agree. I agree with you with letting go. That has been, I always knew I wanted my classroom, just everything I do, I wanted it to be empowered by the students. But it's hard, you have your schedule, you know what you need to do, and it was really something hard to let go. It was my second year. I told myself, I'm going all in. I'm going to let the students lead and make the choices. If they do need that help, I will support, but it's hard letting go and kind of stepping back. So I also do the student council for our school as well. So that gave me a lot of practice too, kind of like sitting back, letting them take control of the afternoon and plan activities and different things for the school with me, just kind of giving my, oh, maybe take a look at the spelling, but not really being hands-on. because I wanted it to be them and I wanted them to be proud of what they were putting out and know that it was all them. So I definitely think I'm still working on it. There are times where, I definitely overpower sometimes with, they have to get these things in. I have to teach it to them. But yeah, just still focusing and working on that, stepping back.
The great examples that you provided us has made me really want to give breakout rooms a try. I mean, I'm at the high school level, and sometimes I'm like, well, we're chatting in the chat. I'm unmuting, kids are sharing, but I think it's a whole nother level of letting go when you put kids in a breakout room. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, I can do it. If they're doing it at the elementary level, they can do it at the high school level too. So thank you for that inspiration, but also um, that one strategy where we're so used to responding to questions, but just having the kids help one another, or you saying, can anyone else respond, or like, can anyone else support that right away? I feel like I've allowed kids to do that before, but I haven't been so super intentional. Like when I hear you say that, it's like, yes, that makes total sense. And I think that that's something that we can all do. And it's not going to take up any more time than us responding to the question by having another kid respond, and have them help each other and build that sense of community, which it's obvious that you've done in your virtual classroom.
Yes, thank you for noticing that. It's so hard not being able to see them. So making sure that what we do online is what we're also going to be doing when we come back. So just making sure they know that. And yeah, the breakout rooms that's the letting go part right there. Making sure, we talk before going into breakout rooms. Here's your goals. So writing it down. So when I come into your breakout room to do a check-in, I want to see where you are as far as meeting your goals for the breakout room. But I try not to bother them. I want them to be with each other, work together as much as possible without teacher interruption.
And I've also noticed that when you put kids in breakout rooms, like your first feeling is like, I need to be in there and I need to say something. But if you just go in there and you like turn off your mic and turn off your camera, it's like they're kind of forced right at that point to either like sit in silence or, hey, we need to do the expectations that we were sent in here to do. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. It's a powerful thing for students to kind of productively struggle. And I think that that's another thing that I'm honing in when I'm hearing you speak is like, hey, we build culture when we're in the classroom face to face. We need to also build culture on these screens, even if the kids' cameras are off or whatnot. It's still important and imperative for us to build the culture that we want to see, specifically that culture of understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, right? You were talking about earlier, you hope that kids point out your mistakes. And like a funny example for me is one of my students, he's always looking for like a mistake on our slides. And back at the beginning of the first quarter, we used to do badge of the week where we would focus on one Naho Penao outcome a week. But now that we've moved, farther into the semester, we now focus on all 6 badges. But our title, or our slide title would still say badge of the week. And he was like, Mr. Argueta, it's badges of the week now. And ever since that, it's like we have to like just double check. Hey, you're right. So I think that we all have to just keep remembering that culture, whatever culture it is that we want, we have to infuse it into the way that we deliver our product to our kids.
I agree, definitely. And it's awesome when they see that the teachers are just humans also. And it really, I feel like that's what builds the culture a lot more in the class. Everyone makes mistakes, and learning from the mistakes is what's most important. So I definitely agree with that.
I think that this idea of culture, I always think about it, especially now, I think about it as building capacity for a radio show. You want them to keep tuning in, and you want them to tune in an engaged fashion, because what you're giving them is something that they find meaningful, something that they find intriguing to listen to at some point in their day, right? And you want them to feel like they have some ownership of it as well. Like, Kev, that's a cool example, man. that kid, they see that S in there, they now probably always think about they always think about S's. And then you start thinking about when they see it in there, it matters a little bit more. And then each kid starts adding a little bit part to the ship, and it becomes more of like this better thing altogether. And I think it can happen if we just do listen to the kids. And I think that's something I need to always remember is listen to the kids. It's so easy for me to get in my mind and to think, I know what's going to be the right decision. And in a pandemic, it's hard to remember to listen to the kids. But I think they're telling us a lot. And that good content is important. But you brought some really good content to us, actually, here in our literacy circle. You, for the first time in our entire podcast history, we have gotten a podcast brought on, recommended on this podcast. You want to tell us a little bit about that, Ms. Oyama?
I do. So I was giving a lot of thought about what piece of literature I wanted to bring in, but then I was also, I was thinking of my own self, but I thought, no, what impacted the kids, from last year's fourth quarter and going into this year? And it has been podcasts. So I started bringing in podcasts last year as a way for students to focus on their listening skills and taking notes. That's very difficult to do sometimes. And, with the time that we had in class, it's like, okay, I only have a certain amount of time. And a lot of it is writing things down and copying the notes. And I was like, no, I want to do something. I want to try something different. So I looked online for different podcasts for kids, and I came across kidslisten.org. There is a whole bunch of podcasts, different subjects, different content. One podcast I wanted to really try with them is called 6 Minutes. It is an ongoing story. Each podcast is about 4 to 6 minutes. So we would do that throughout the day. That would be when we would come in from recess as our cooling, we would take out our notebooks. We would listen for that 4 to 6 minutes, and we would be taking notes. So what I would try to do is pose a question on the board. So they would have to listen for that, for the answer or for the evidence to support it. But this podcast, and I really recommend it, is amazing. The characters, they do voices, the music, it is so intense. It's like living in a book. And so, making it fun for them. They had no idea that they were gaining all these skills listening to this awesome mystery. So 6 Minutes is an awesome podcast I recommend for anyone, adults. I listen to it. I'm on the second season already, getting prepared for the next step.
Love that. And that is kidslisten.org?
Yes.
Kidslisten.org. Shout outs. Yes, that's so cool. And I mean, podcasting is here to stay. It's something that has grown so much. I mean, when we started, and then now, like, seeing other educators too wanting to bring in podcasting into their classrooms at the high school level. I know for me, that's been something that I've assigned, like where kids go and listen to a podcast about when we talk about the power of argument, but I haven't been as intentional with it or playing it in class. It's been like, this is a resource that you can use when you're researching your topic, but just hearing you say how you embed that right after they come back from a break to cool off, that's another way to turn those little warm-ups around. For me, it was Mysteries of Vernacular, a TED Ed alphabet video where we will watch the letter of the day. So there will be an A video, a B video. But now podcasting, that's another add-on that I can throw in there. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
There's when you were talking, Ashley, and you were talking about podcasting, I started to think about your class, and you said your class is a very sporty class this year, yeah? And it's so interesting how like classes, you'll have different types of characters, right, in your classes every year. And this class might enjoy, it's slipping my mind the title, but if you look it up, and it's Kobe Bryant Studios. He came out with a kid podcast, and it's a series of a podcast that is based on characters that neighborhood kids that get together and play sports. So they play baseball, soccer, and it's an awesome podcast, like you were mentioning, where it's like they have voices, music, awesome plots. They're about like 15 to 20 minutes long. I think your kids would really like that one too.
I mean, I really want to check it out. That sounds awesome. So I definitely will embed that into our online class. That's amazing. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
I have an inkling as to why your class might be into sports so much. I think you've learned a lot through sports. I mean, I've had the privilege to see your boys grow up and in the canoe on track and field. And I've seen what you've done with other kids as well. And I think sports are like that other piece. You know, it's something else. So it's cool to hear that so many different studios are trying to produce content, like we said, like trying to reach kids. And like in the work that you do to reach kids, I think it comes together. And when you're willing to listen and you're willing to take time out to try and reach them in these new ways, because it's not that new. A podcast is just a voice.
The radio.
Mm-hmm. And you're acknowledging that, bringing it into the classroom in this new way, and who doesn't like it, you know? And I think you can find a lot of success in that. And I think it's really cool for you to bring that resource to us, for us to bring some of those resources as well, because there's a lot more. All of these are probably like our second favorite education podcast out today. Thank you so much for joining us here on our first favorite education podcast here today. Miss Oyama, taking some time out on this Sunday. Your busy Sunday. I know you got so much to do. I know the Cowboys are on right now. I apologize about everything. I apologize about that. But before we let you go, do you have any advice for us moving forward?
Advice as a community, as teachers, as a school?
All of the above.
All of the above. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. You know, it might sound cliche, but just sticking together and always looking at what is best for students. I always, I get up every morning. Some days the alarm is snoozed several times, but I get up and I think, okay, I have to do what's best for kids. And if I don't show up, no one's going to show up for them. Putting our differences aside, always just keeping that in, at the forefront is just doing what's best for them. This is such a different time for all kids, from elementary, middle, and high school. This has never happened before, but just being that voice for them and keeping them always at the front and just doing what we need to do for them. Sometimes we don't like hearing what we have to do for them, but just putting that aside and just knowing that it's going to benefit them in the end, regardless of what it is that we need to do. So I think that would be my advice moving forward, just sticking together and keeping these students always at the top.
Love that advice. Sticking together is so important. From 4 years ago when we got to collaborate as a complex 5th grade team, Ashley, it was awesome working with you back then, and it's so awesome to see where your journey has taken you as the West Hawaii Complex Area Teacher of the Year. You keep inspiring kids, keep inspiring your community, and we are just so appreciative of all the hard work that you put into your profession and elevating our profession to new levels. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. This has been another Maestro's Vibe. I'm Kev. Ahuiho.
Thank you. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We appreciate all of the support throughout the years that we've been podcasting, and also being able to bring in great community members, great colleagues. We thank you all for listening and for tuning in.
Thank you all for listening. One small side story, just Miss Oyama really does care. There was a time where this was pre-pandemic years ago, when you were also, do you mind if I share this airport story on the mic? Or I'll cut.
Go ahead.
I'll ask Kevin to stop recording right now.
Go ahead.
Okay, but I want to share this just so y'all know. If you're still with us, to our listeners, just big mahalo. Thank you. Rate us, review us, leave us 5 stars, big thumbs up, please. Otherwise, we think you don't support education. And Mrs. Oyama supports education through and through. Like, even while you were working in schools, you were holding down, while you were supporting your own kids, supporting your family, you were also holding down another job at the airport as well. That is, and not just holding it down, but with aloha. And if I could just share, like, I was visiting, and thank you for letting, like, I was visiting my family in New York for holidays about, man, this must have been like 5 or 6 years ago. And you knew me. Maybe we knew each other in school a bit. Like, I think your oldest may have been in my class, maybe at that point. Yeah, and you saw that I was on that flight in going to New York, and you took care of me, and you made sure that I was taken care of the whole way to New York. The fact that you noticed that, saw that, took the opportunity to do that, and it doesn't have to be something big like that at all, but like, just to think of other people like that is something that I'm so appreciative of. I think about that regularly because it made that trip to see my family, which now during pandemic times is so fleeting, and so something that I think we hold on to so much more dearly. So I just thank you so much for that time you shared with me. I will never forget that. I appreciate the time you have here with us, and just thank you for everything, Mrs. Oyama, and thank you to everybody. And
you're welcome, always.
Till next time, everyone.